introduce you to a incredible young woman. Our next speaker is Danielle Moreland. She's a survivor of violent crime. Danielle's story is extraordinary in some ways, and unfortunately in other ways it's all too common. Danielle found herself in an abusive marriage with her husband who threatened and insulted her for several years. When Danielle found the courage to leave her husband, the judicial system failed her miserably. Although her husband had been convicted of domestic violence, had a prior rap sheet that spanned over 15 years in 5 counties, of which Danielle didn't know about at the time they wed. After his conviction of domestic violence against Danielle, he continued to stalk, harass, and threaten her. He attempted to break into her home, run her off the road. Additional charges were filed, but the judge then refused to hear the case. Why? Because Danielle had finally saved enough money to file for divorce. And when she filed for the divorce, the judge in the criminal court had a policy to not hear victims' rights cases, their domestic violence cases, when a divorce was pending. The divorce went on for 2.5 years. For 2.5 years, her husband threatened her, sent her life-threatening voicemails to threaten her life. Again, ran her and her children off the road on 3 separate occasions. She and her children lived in constant fear. She begged the prosecutor for protection. She begged the court to not allow these continuances to happen, and they refused still to hear her cases. Finally, her divorce was concluded, and the criminal prosecution began. And you won't believe what happened next. The case was dismissed because the judge determined that the defendant's right to a speedy trial had been violated. I would like to introduce Danielle Moreland, the true survivor.
The living hell that Kathy described in my case is quite accurate, and I feel as though no one should have to endure what my family went through for more than 2 years at the hands of my ex-husband. I cannot describe how much the entire process and outcome have shaken my faith and fairness of the criminal justice process. As a victim, nobody cared about my right to talk with the prosecutor prior to dismissing the second domestic violence case and protection order violation. And nobody really cared about my right to object to substantial delays in prosecution. I did have these rights, but nobody would listen to me. Marsy's law for Ohio will change this. It will give teeth to victims' rights laws and provide crime victims the ability to enforce their rights. Ohio voters need to pass this law for Ohio so that other women never have to live through a similar nightmare. This is a very exciting law to see because I know as a victim, it really makes you feel victimized when you're not listened to and these things happen. So again, thank you. Thank you for all your help.
Danielle, thank you so much for your strength to endure and your courage to share your story here today. It'll definitely go a long way to help others. Next, I would like to introduce our next incredible young woman and survivor, Anna Hurd. Anna is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Anna had the courage to report when she was 15 years old. Unfortunately, she and her mother had no idea what they were in store for. I'm trying to condense Anna's case, so I'm looking at my notes because otherwise I will talk about both of their cases forever. Initially, there were mistakes in the indictment where only a handful of the charges were considered when they spanned over years of times. Then the criminal court case drug on for well over 2 years, really depriving Anna of the ability to begin the healing process, attempt to focus on her education, and just have a normal life as a child. Anna and her mother were also denied the right to be present in the courtroom, and that really only added to this sense of their, compounded their feelings of frustration and injustice. And I want to welcome Anna today and thank her for sharing her story. And ladies and gentlemen, Anna Herb.
Hi everyone. I stand before you as the face of so many that had to fight for what is theirs, their truth. I, like many, have been impacted by having my rights as a victim and a person told to me falsely. I was thrown into a whirlwind at 15 years old just trying to speak my truth of what was done to me as a little child, where I did not have a voice. Through fighting for my rights in the court system, I lost so much because the man that changed my life and created a pain that goes so deep seemed to be way more important to everyone else. He had 2 little girls and 1 on the way, and I stopped fighting for myself due to the justice system, and I started fighting to protect those little ones from his victimization and being victimized over and over again through the court proceedings as each continuance grew heavier and heavier, weighing me down. We now, through Marsy's law, have the opportunity to change that for others. We can use my story and so many others in the past as stepping stones to change the future for victims and their families, because we don't think about the families and what the families go through as well. The families are just as much victimized as we are, and Marsy's law is a true testament to that and what their family had to go through. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and let's make a change.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. All right. So this year, let's fulfill our promise to crime victims by, I'm sorry, and I'm just not thinking about you. It's time that we fulfill our promise to crime victims. Marsy's Law for Ohio will provide crime victims the enforcement mechanisms that they need to ensure their rights are upheld consistently throughout the state. So please, I think all of us working together can support Marsy's Law for Ohio and get this passed in Ohio. Once again, I want to thank everyone for being here today. If our friends in the media have any questions, please feel free to ask. We have many coalition members that would be willing to speak with you, as well as our speakers here today. And so if anyone has questions, please.
Can you describe what the enforcement mechanism in the proposed constitutional amendment would be?
So at this stage, it's not clearly articulated within statute or the Constitution, the enforceability process if victims' rights are ignored. What we've done over the years is we will send in an attorney to represent victims for free to enforce their right, whether it's the right to be present, the right to restitution, the right to privacy. When those rights are violated, we send attorneys in. But unfortunately, throughout the state, there are many courts that ignore these motions. We've had sexual assault cases drag on for 5.5 years. We've gone in to represent the victim by filing the objection on behalf of the victim and asking the court to set a date certain. And what's happened as a result of some of these cases is the court not only ignored the victim's motion to attempt to exercise their right to object to substantial delay, but the judge went on and continued the case for 8 months, punishing the victim for having the audacity to attempt to protect their rights. Marsy's Law for Ohio will clearly articulate that victims have the right to counsel to enforce their rights. If their rights are further denied, they will have the right to appeal. They don't have that in the current Constitution.
I had a question about the right to be present in the courtroom. If the victim is also going to be testifying against the accused, isn't there an issue of...
Now, I'm not an attorney, so I have to say that
Maybe
first.
it's
So there's
someone
evidence rule. Evidence rule 615 also addresses separation of witnesses. You want to answer it? Okay.
Sure.
But the answer is no. They can be, that does not apply to crime victims. But well, let the prosecutor explain.
And that is an issue that this amendment will try and resolve, because as you know, there is a rule that says anyone's going to be a witness in a case, you can order, the court, trial judge can order a separation of witnesses where they're asked to leave the courtroom, and some judges have interpreted that as saying even if you're the victim with a separate victim's right to be present, that the rule overrides that. And there are some judges that have ruled that way, and actually there are some cases that have said that the trial court should balance the two rights and make a decision as to which one should be honored, the right to effectively kick the victim out of the courtroom during the trial versus the right to be present under the victim's rights law. And I think this will make it crystal clear that the right to be present prevails, and then there won't be a debate about that issue going forward, either under rules of evidence or under the criminal rule on a motion to separate.
I actually wanted to speak on that because that was a huge thing during my trial. I was a teenager, and there were two parties involved in that. He was involved and I was involved. And I have every right to be present to hear what's going on in his court case because I was the one that was involved. So I think Marsy's law can then make it known because I was told I couldn't be. I was told like what I needed to do, where I needed to be, all of that. So my voice was completely taken. And as a victim, that's so important that I know what's going on and I have that right. Like if, my mother were to testify or like, his brother or whatever the case may be, that's a different story. But me and the person that perpetrated, that's a whole nother ballgame, and that's where Marsy's law can make it more definitive. Thank you.
Danielle, come back up there for one more question. Yes. Either one of you. Yeah, both of you would be great. So you kind of explained that you felt like you were victimized and maybe re-victimized by the system. Would you explain to me your feelings about this, whether you felt the system re-victimized you?
Do you want to go first?
I feel like in my personal circumstances, I feel like in my circumstances, I was being told that by filing for divorce in order to go through the criminal process, basically, I felt like they were saying, well, no, don't get a divorce. You have to continue to deal with all of this. And I also felt re-victimized when at one point a protection order was dropped and the perpetrator knew about it before I did and had harassed me and let me know that. So I think also for me, being turned away during a probation revocation hearing, only to later find out he was released from probation, I felt that I should have been a part of that hearing, and I was not. So I think with some of these circumstances, I felt like I did feel victimized, that I wasn't being heard, that I lived with this perpetrator at one time. I knew what he was capable of. So for them not to hear that, it would have just been another case in front of the court. But I knew that I needed something intact for my safety and the safety of my children. And that, again, makes you feel victimized.
On his rights as opposed to yours, do you feel like he had more rights in court than you did?
I definitely feel like he had more rights. Understanding the legal process, I understand, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but I also felt while going through that process, again, me and my children needed to be protected, and I just don't feel as though that was done.
Anna, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to say safety is key in any situation with the victim. And I am at a point in my life where it's hard to use the word victim, but at the same time, that's my truth. And I had over 23 continuances through over a 2-year process. I was end of my freshman year of high school, going into my sophomore year. It wasn't until my junior year. So you can only imagine, I'm trying to do well, prepare for college, do all these different things. Well, finding out, I just remember one time I was in my family room, and I would always look to my mom, because they would always call her, of course, because I was a minor. And I just remember that feeling of looking over, and it was just like, it had been, you know, over a year, and we get the phone call, and it's like another continuance, and I just felt like somebody just took a knife and it was just the worst feeling. And luckily I was just like sitting on the floor, and I was just like, you know, you just feel this like helpless, hopeless feeling that you remember when everything was going on. You have no voice, you have no rights, you have nothing. But yet he gets the right to a speedy trial. He's the one that's protected. And I speak for many people that I know, and we just want to say, what about us? They get plea bargains. What about us? So that's where Marsy's Law helps stand up for us as well. So thank you.
I'm going to apologize quickly for doing this, but I do want to go back to your question too about the victim's right to be present in the courtroom. So a couple things about that. In Ohio, the current statute says the victim has the right to be present anytime the defendant is present, unless the court determines that the victim's presence is going to impact the defendant's right to a fair trial. The Evidence Rule 615 was amended in 2003 to not exclude victims. So the separation of witness, Evidence Rule 615, does not exclude victims. They changed the language. Now here's the biggest caveat. So around the state, many prosecutors I don't believe are aware of this at this stage. And secondly, every court in the nation, there has not been one court that has determined that a victim's mere presence in the courtroom impacts the defendant's right to a fair trial. And that's going through appeals, through Supreme Courts. So, and the reason is, if defense feels that a victim has somehow altered their story, they have the opportunity to cross. And so there's a cure. So basically that's where we are with. I just wanted to make that clarification.
Could you talk about the campaign efforts? What kind of, how you're going to organize it? Are you going to try and collect signatures through volunteer efforts, paid, mixture?
Sure.
If you feel like you have to raise a whole bunch of money in order to do this?
Yeah, Aaron Marshall, AARON Marshall, spokesman for Marsy's Law for Ohio. In terms of